love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
What's up, guys? Leighton here for UFC Gambling Addicts, back again with another episode of The Insight. This is going to be for the UFC Sao Paulo card, which is approaching on Saturday night. As always, before we get into this episode, if your preferred underdog isn't on the screen, if your preferred parlay builder, finisher, or your most confident pick isn't on the screen, I'm not telling you you're making a wrong pick. I'm taking 5 underdogs on this card, but I'm going to mention 3. So, as always, whoever you're taking, I'm not saying you're making a bad pick. I'm a firm believer of, I've said this many times. If you're not inside the octagon, you have an imagination and an opinion, and you're never wrong until you see the fight. And absolutely anything can happen in any fight. We see that week in, week out. So yeah, that being said, let's get into the episode. I'm going to mention 3 underdogs. We'll start with 2 though, because these 2 have a similar price. So I'll put them on the screen first. Ariane Lipski and Wellington Turman. We'll start with Ariane Lipski. So this girl, she's got a short replacement fight in Veronica Macedo. She was originally supposed to fight that Brazilian zombie girl, Priscilla. But she's fighting Veronica. And this is, it's a tough fight to make a pick on. But as far as I'm concerned, man, if Lipski can just keep this on the feet, she's in with a good chance. Like, you look at her debut against Joanne Calderwood. She was a big favourite going into that debut. I didn't favour her in that one. I felt Joanne Calderwood was being disrespected. And Joanne Calderwood was able to use takedowns and grappling. Fair enough. She was schooled on her debut. Against Molly McCann, I did take Lipski. I'm sure a lot of us took Lipski in that fight despite the debut. And Molly McCann, she beat her on toughness and bravery. Molly McCann's just Molly McCann. She's going to throw heavy hands. She's going to walk forward. And the most shocking thing in that fight was Molly McCann was able to secure her own takedowns. Usually she'd get takedowns and the opponent would get back to the feet. But Molly actually secured takedowns in that fight. So that was interesting. This time, she's against Veronica Macedo. I don't think Veronica is as strong as Molly or Joanne Calderwood when it comes to clinching. Now, Veronica has got good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I believe she's a black belt in Taekwondo. So even if Veronica keeps it on the feet, man, her leg kicks from a distance could be the story. But as far as I'm concerned, man, Lipski has good kicks as well. And she's just really got to go for it in this fight. And I think at plus money, it's worth a good shot. Okay, Wellington Turman. This is another one. It's a very tough fight to call because both guys pretty much mirror each other. Marcus Perez is a grappler. Wellington Turman is a grappler. Now, when the fight isn't in the clinch, Marcus Perez likes to use his kicks. He likes to be first in the striking with using his kicks. Wellington Turman, I think he can mirror that. If Marcus Perez is circling the octagon, throwing kicks to be first, Wellington Turman can use a stiff jab and also fire back with his own kicks. Marcus Perez isn't the type of guy to really put you in much danger with his hands. Like, the only time I really remember him having much success with his hands was probably his last fight, which was against Anthony Hernandez. And he didn't even really get the fight done with punches up top. It was a body kick from Marcus Perez that put Hernandez in trouble. So yeah, for Wellington Turman, I think even in the clinch, if both guys grapple, I think Wellington Turman is explosive. Has proven that he's got a good ground game. He's a strong guy up against the fence. So I don't see Marcus Perez beating him there. It may be close there, and maybe I'm wrong, but for the most part, I think Wellington Turman can compete in the clinch. And on the feet, the real difference for me is Wellington Turman is a better puncher. I see him, against Carl Roberson in the debut. There's an argument that Wellington won that fight, and maybe an argument for Carl too. I'm not denying that. But Wellington Turman was doubling up on his punches, actually forcing Carl Roberson to grapple. So the telling story for me in this one would be the punching difference. I think Wellington Turman can punch, potentially hurt Marcus Perez, whereas I think Marcus Perez is just going to look like Marcus Perez circling the octagon, firing kicks until he's in the clinch. It's a close fight, but I'm willing once again to take a shot on Wellington at plus money. Okay, Renan Barão is my third underdog, and I know, like a strong 97% of you are just right now going, no, please not Renan Barão, Renan Barão, please. And initially, I was thinking the same thing. Like, he's on a 4-fight losing streak, a man who was completely destroyed by USADA. And he's just a shell, man. He's a shell of himself, and it's sad to see. But if you look at this fight, look at this matchup, and just kind of disregard the 4-fight losing streak. I know it's silly to disregard that information, but to take this pick, you're gonna have to just disregard everything post USADA and all of that. I know it's silly, but just hear me out. I'm looking at this fight, right? Douglas Andrade, primarily a boxer inside the octagon. This guy has 19 TKOs in his MMA career, and we've seen that. This guy is very tough. He has big power in his hands, and there's a good chance that Douglas Andrade does sleep Renan Barão. Now, Renan Barão is a very good grappler. Awarded his black belt back in 2011, light years ahead of Douglas Andrade when it comes to grappling. If Douglas Andrade was to offer Renan Barão a boxing bout, we know how it goes. If Renan was able to offer Douglas a grappling bout, we know how it goes. So let's just assume neither guy wins with their primary fighting style. Yeah, let's say Renan Barão doesn't sub Douglas. Let's say Douglas doesn't sleep Renan. Now this leaves the kicks. It leaves the kicks and the movement, and potentially the conditioning, which is also a worry for anyone who's going for Renan Barão. And most people picking against Renan Barão, it's because you don't believe in his conditioning and just his recent form. Now, but if you look back to the Luke Sanders fight, I went against Renan Barão in this fight. I took Luke Sanders, but rewatching the first round, Renan Barão was firing some nasty body kicks and leg kicks. And it looked like, a couple times in the first round, it looked like Renan Barão was close to getting a finish. Like, they weren't just landing. They were landing with full force. So maybe if he takes a little bit of the power off and thinks about it a little bit more, because maybe, who knows, maybe after 1, 2, 3 powerful body kicks, Renan Barão just underestimated Luke Sanders, tried to get him out there in the first, got slept in the second. I think, listen, if Renan Barão's ever going to break this losing streak, I don't know if they can give him, like, who can they give him further down than Douglas Andrade at this point? Like, it's going to have to be someone who's, like, debuting. Like, if there's ever a chance, it's going to be now. And I've counted Renan Barão out pretty much most of his last 4. But at plus 200... I can't miss the chance. I would rather take the chance on Renan Barão plus 200, be wrong and say okay, than not take the chance and be sitting there with, wow, I should have done that. I'd be far more accepting taking a chance and losing rather than not taking a chance and, what if. Moving on into parlay builder. Actually, no, this is going to be parlay finisher. And I'm going to give you one guy. This is the one guy I'm going to be ending like pretty much all of my parlays with. And like I said at the start of this episode, if your guy or girl isn't on my video, it doesn't matter. Still take your person. Like, I'm not some elite being in predictions. I'm just a regular person who loves the sport. But I do love to put out my content and my opinions. So even if you go against it, man, always leave a comment. Let's chat in there. There was like 20 plus people who agreed with one guy on Calvin Gastelum, and then there was 15 plus people who agreed with someone on Volkov. So I took Greg Hardy, I was wrong. I took Darren Till, I was right. Sometimes we're wrong, sometimes we're right. But my parlay finisher is going to be Jan Blachowicz. Now, there's a reason why I'm going to take Jan to finish literally all of my parlays pretty much. Firstly, I believe he's going to win, which is always a good reason to take someone. That being said, there's a strategic reason also why I'm taking Jan. And you may just think, well, you're just going to cover Jacare. Yes, but I've gone deeper. I've gone deeper with how I'm going to cover Jacare, because I've already figured out all scenarios, really. Okay, so let's say I have 700, 800. Let's talk real good numbers for profit. Obviously, if I have ridiculous numbers and pretty much all of my bets are coming in and they're all ending on Jan and there's 8 bets alive, then obviously I can just cover Jacare outright. Now, let's say there's 400 or 300 pound profit instead of a ridiculous amount of profit. Maybe then you could still go outright if you're willing to not make too much money. So let's now say, okay, there's £180 profit. There's £200 profit. Now we're getting into the point where, well, there's only £200 profit. How can we cover and still make a good amount? So this is where you have to pick a prop. Now, most people who are taking Jacare, or I don't know, I don't know if I want to say most people, maybe most people, they're thinking sub. They think Jacare is going to sub Jan Blachowicz. I could be wrong. I could always be wrong. But I personally think that Jacare's best chance of winning this fight is TKO. And I know that's crazy because Jacare is an 8-time world Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion. And why would I think he's going to TKO people? Well, if you take a look at his recent career, if you take a look at the last few years, you can see the evidence is there. So let's take a look at his last fight against Chris Weidman. He spent 15 minutes on the feet. He didn't initiate a takedown. Sorry, his last fight was Jack Hermansson. So Chris Weidman, 15 minutes, didn't initiate a takedown, got it done with strikes. Jack Hermansson, 25 minutes. Jack Hermansson was close to getting a choke. Jacare was tired after 10, and it was contested on the feet. Calvin Gastelum, now he did try and sub Calvin in the first round, but after that, it was contested on the feet. Derek Brunson, North Carolina, I was at this fight live. And I went back, so I haven't seen this fight on TV on the Fight Pass, but I've watched it recently. And John Anik was basically saying, Jacare gets one takedown in all of his last 8 fights, but Derek Brunson has never been taken down. Well, that wasn't the story. Once again, Jacare has these guys scared with, oh, he's going to take me down. And Jacare goes to the body with 7 or 8 body kicks and then goes high with 1 kick, and that's Derek Brunson done. Against Robert Whittaker, he was a bit manic to get that fight to the feet, but if you look at his last 4, Jacare, he's looking to hurt you on the feet. Tim Boesch, 2017, the start of 2017 was the last time Jacare subbed someone. So I personally believe TKO would be the best cover for Jacare, and even better because against Jack Hermansson, the sub was the best prop on Jacare, and the TKO price was ridiculous. So it's like the majority of the public still think Jacare's best chance is sub, when he's given us a lot of evidence that he's become a guy who wants to get it done standing. Obviously, the BJJ is always there to fall back on. He's always going to fall back on it if he needs it. But as far as I'm concerned, man, Jacare looks like a guy who wants to take you out on the feet. And that's all I've seen recently for the last 2 years. Now, that's the betting side of things with Jan Blachowicz versus Jacare. That's basically how I'm going to still make profit, even if I'm wrong with picking Jan Blachowicz. Now, if Jacare wins by submission or decision, that's where, I'm completely wrong. So I've lost money but I haven't only lost money once, I've lost money twice because I chose to cover Jacare TKO. Now, obviously, if the profit is way down there, like £60, £70 returns, I'm not even going to bother covering at all. So, you know, there's different levels. If there's a lot of profit, you can go outright. If there's medium to kind of good amount, you can still maybe go outright depending on what you're happy with. If there's minimal but decent, then I'm going to go TKO. But if there's just, you know, slight profit, then there's no cover at all. Anyway, moving on into the actual fight itself. I think Jan can win because he's bigger. He hits just as hard. You know, he's very powerful. He can grapple. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's had this moment before. Where it was 5 rounds. It was in Europe as well. It was in Czech Republic against Santos, which was the first 185er he fought. Then he fought Luke Rockhold, where completely destroyed Luke. Now, for most people who do think Jacare sub is the likely outcome, I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but this would be my argument against it. So look at Luke Rockhold for the first 3 to 3.5 minutes. Basically from the start of the first round to the 4th minute, Luke Rockhold tried to take down Jan up against the fence. If you look at Luke Rockhold's hair, his face, in the 1st, 2nd and 3rd minute, and then look at his face, hair and all of that on like 45 seconds left, a minute left of that first round, it genuinely looks like Luke Rockhold has been in a sauna. Literally. So if Jacare spends 3 or 4 minutes in that first round trying to take down Jan, it's going to look the same. Jacare is going to be a dead man coming out in that 2nd round, and Jan's gonna pick up on that. So that's another reason why I think Jacare TKO is the best cover for this Saturday. Moving into the most confident picks, Jan Blachowicz obviously has to be a part of this. But if you was to ask me for another name, if I had to give another name, it's got to be the guy who is the biggest favourite on this card, Charles Oliveira. Now, I say all of that so confidently, like Jared Gordon's just a walk in the park. He's not. He's a tough guy who sets a higher pace. But Charles Oliveira, this guy just amazes me every single time he fights. Like the last 5 of his fights, every time it looks better and better. Now, we knew this guy was just like this jiu-jitsu guy who was evolving with his striking. But now we know him as the best submission artist pretty much in the UFC. Like, he has the most submissions in the UFC. And his striking, like his kicks, his speed, his range with his jabs and all of it. He puts it all together, man. And this guy's getting paid a lot of money, and rightfully so. This guy is a killer. And he's looking like a real contender in the division. Like I say, is the minus 350 price worth it? No. He's not a parlay finisher for me. I'm not going to build much around him. He'll be in like 1, maybe 2, the most, because the price is insane. But if you take the numbers away, I say Charles Oliveira is still probably up there, my most confident pick with Jan Blachowicz. As always, put down your most confident picks, your parlay builders, your finishers, your underdogs, and let's get chatting. I appreciate you guys. Catch you on the next one. Peace.